Now, in West Africa, Malians voted in parliamentary elections on Sunday, but low turnout and voter abuses marred the process. It was the second nationwide poll meant to complete a democratic transition in Mali after last year's coup. There were reports of armed men carrying off ballot boxes from some polling stations in the Timbuktu region of northern Mali, preventing some people from casting their votes in the legislative poll. It was not immediately clear who was responsible. But despite some irregularities in some places and low voter turnout, some officials remain hopeful that the vote will help the country get back on track.
For a while, Mali was seen as an illegitimate state, where the country was going through a period of transition. We had presidential elections, and now we are holding legislative elections, followed by municipal elections, which will go towards making Mali a legitimate state.
Only a fraction of the 6.7 million people registered to vote appear to have cast their ballot, compared to the long queues of voters that marked the presidential vote. Many people who did not participate in the vote said the country was not ready for elections, blaming Tuareg rebels who still control pockets of the north.
The Malian people do not trust the current government. Another thing is the situation in Kidal, which continues to frustrate the Malian people. I think those are the two main things that have contributed to the low voter turnout for these parliamentary elections.
The level of participation was very low, unlike the presidential elections. This time, it was only half of those who participated at the presidential election.
The election of a new parliament is supposed to complete the democratic transition in the wake of last year's coup. Louis Michel, head of the European Mission Election Observer Mission, welcomed the general outcome of the vote.
I have the impression that these elections were overall better organized than the presidential elections. So at this point, I'm reassured in the manner in which they were conducted, despite the low voter turnout.
Well, for more perspective, I'm joined now by Idrissa Fall, senior editor with VOA's French to Africa service. Welcome, Idrissa.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. Now, the elections took place. You've listened to all this. Did you expect any more or less?
I think no surprise, because people knew that the turnout will not be very, very high because of the problem in Kidal, and because also people didn't mention it. You know, all those candidates, if I take Bamako, the capital, 260 candidates, there is only 40 women. And I think in Mali, women are a part important of the electoral process. And over the young people are saying that you take the older guys and they come back to the parliament. So it was not a surprise.
Now, you've been there. People want to know, since the presidential election took place, is there any indication at this time that actually the country is kind of getting back on track, that life is becoming a bit kind of normal, especially in the north?
Well, I think that it will take time, because until now the situation in Kidal is the same, even though the rebels are giving back the government offices. In some places they did not allow the vote, not very far from Gao. And besides that, you know, Mali was so down, you know, with corruption, no army. And having a presidential election was good. Having a new parliament is good, but it is a way. But I think Mali to be back, it will take a little while.
I've heard some people, ask questions regarding, especially Malians in the diaspora, quite a sizable number. Were they able to participate in this election?
Well, it was the same thing, because the electoral list was based on the one they did before the coup. So most of them could not vote, even though they were allowed to vote. But it is the usual mess we know in organizing election in Mali, even though they say that this time it was better than during the presidential election.
Yes. Now, there were people that were in refugee camps. There's some in Niger, but others even locally within the country, internally displaced. What are you hearing from the ground? What is their state?
The Minister of Interior told us that he will do whatever was in his power to have those refugees in Niger, in Burkina Faso, and Mauritania vote. But I don't know if they were able to do it. But they were organizing them to vote. and they took a system where the displaced people inside Mali could vote. But I cannot, for the time being, since we don't have the result, I don't know how was the turnout in those refugee camps.
Yeah, but looking at the overall conduct of the election and the attitude of the people, would you say that Mali has actually seen the last of the instability and tension that we witnessed a few months ago?
Well, I'm not so optimistic, because the guy in front of there, those Islamists, from time to time, they will throw a shell, rockets, kamikaze, and France is saying that they are fighting them, but you cannot fight an enemy you don't know where he is. I think it will take a while to fight against terrorism in Mali, and especially when the country does not have a real army. It will be done by the UN or France itself. I think there is a long way to go.
Well, Idrissa, thank you for your insights,
Thank you.
always.
Thanks.
Well, Idrissa Fall is a senior editor with the VOA's French to Africa service. Well, now we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com.